Hello everyone, welcome. Great to see you all here in this wonderful space. It's great to see founders from everywhere in the world. See colleagues, see experts, see industry leaders, CEOs, marketeers, wherever you come from, families and friends. You've come here to see the Smart Energy batch of 2019, and you will see them. It's going to be a great afternoon, but before we start, I'd like to use a little bit of an energizer, because we're going to talk about energy here, smart energy. So let me ask you, please, stand up first. All stand up. Thank you. All right, that looks different. Now, who of you does not have a smartphone? If you don't have a smartphone with you, you can sit down. Okay, that didn't work. Those of you that do have a smartphone, please take it. And be sure that you switch off your sound. Of course, you already did that, right? But the next thing is a bit harder. You switch on your light. We want to see some smart light. So switch on your smart lights and shine it to me. Oh, wow. This is amazing. I love it. Smart energy. Thank you. That worked well. Okay, so you managed that. But you also need to make sure that you're connected, right? Smart energy is also connected. So those of you that did not manage to get the access code to the Wi-Fi, it's the Rockstart Wi-Fi. And it has a password, Smart Energy 17 with capital S. Make sure you have that in your phone, because you need it. You can use it to do some tweeting and some other social media stuff. I'm not sure whether you have the time for that. But even more important is that you can download an app to use during this presentation. Who of you already downloaded the app and activated them? You can sit down. Okay. That worked. Because the good thing is, this app allows you to see information about the event, information about the startups, connect with them, find their details, and do some voting too. Isn't that amazing? So, now you go ahead, take your smartphone, go to the App Store, download. It's going to take a while, but we'll get there. Make sure you download it. You need an activation code when you're in. Yes. And you create a profile. Just name and email address. And I guess you're there. So when you're finished and done, you can sit down. And we'll just wait until everyone's ready. Oh, look. Yeah, still some people working on it. Good. Almost there. If you need help, ask your neighbor. We like sharing knowledge, so we love to help. Everyone's sitting, except for one. Yes, the last one is seated. Okay, then it's really time to start. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to go off. Let's start.
We are officiator.
One.
Hero balancer.
We are solar people. They power to the people.
Solar captors. We are sun data.
Mama Moss, tent face.
Solar cream. We love chickens.
Rockstart Smart Energy is a 150-day accelerator program in the heart of Amsterdam's startup scene. Every year, we select 10 startups from everywhere in the world to develop promising ideas into investable and scalable companies.
The highlight of our program is actually when we were at our lowest. We had to pivot and start from scratch. It taught us what we're made of and be stronger.
It's accelerated. You never know what to expect, and you have to be very fast. And a lot happens in 6 months. What you would hardly be able to do in 3 years, you have to do it in 150 days. and it's exciting, totally exciting.
Today, Demo Day, it's the day for the startups. They've been working hard for months and even on the weekends, days and nights, and now they have the opportunity showing the world what they are doing, what their ideas and how they want to disrupt the energy market. So be excited and let's rock the stage.
Welcome to Demo Day!
All right, that's a good energizer. So it's time to really start. You're dying to see these guys for real, and they will be on stage. But you have to abide with me for, I guess, another 20 minutes, because I want to talk a little bit about smart energy. What makes energy smart? Is there such a thing as stupid energy? I think there is, and you might see some of that in my little presentation. Let's have a look. When I think of smart energy, I think it needs to tick a few boxes. Since we need a lot of energy, it at least needs to be abundant. Yeah, we need a lot of them. It needs to make up for the money, and it should be reliable enough to make us comfortable that we always have the energy that we need it. That's fine. But we also have to take care of the downsides of energy and make sure that the energy is carbon-free. That's actually creating jobs and safety for the rest of the world, and is an energy source that is still innovative and innovating, and has potential to grow and become even smarter in the future. So, let's go back to the first smart energy source. People really got smart about energy about 200 years ago in the Industrial Revolution. That created a huge amount of prosperity. We became smart in using energy, using coal. Coal is great, and it was developed in one country in particular. Britain built a whole empire fueled by coal. And they became the rulers of the world because they got every coal out of the country, out of the soil that they could get, and they still do. Although, there was something interesting this year on the 22nd of April. On the 22nd of April, for the first time since the Industrial Revolution, England could do with their power without coal. The first full day of their history, they didn't use any coal. That was the start of something. And you might say that's just one day, right? That doesn't count. Well, let's look at July. In July this year, only 2% of their energy came from coal. So something's happening here. And there are guys that think that you can make coal clean. Especially this very smart guy thinks, really, he thinks that washing the coal before you burn it will make it clean. Well, I'm in a room now with people that do know that this is slightly more complicated to get to clean coal. And it looks a little bit more like this. A very complicated, huge machine that takes the output of a coal plant, the exhaust, the emissions, tries to clean it from carbon and other emissions, and put that carbon in the ground. Carbon storage. That would be the solution to make coal clean. But unfortunately, 3 years delayed, $44 billion over budget, these guys in the US decided, well, let's quit it, guys. Let's switch to gas and forget about carbon storage. And there's a similar project in the Netherlands. This week is a sad week for carbon storage in the Netherlands because Uniper and Engie said that this week they will withdraw from the one and only carbon project in the Netherlands, even though they have already swallowed 300 million euros or more. That's not going to cut it. I think coal is about ready for a museum. It should be in the museum of our energy. Actually, there is already a coal museum. It's in Kentucky. Kentucky is also a hotbed for coal. And they have a coal mining museum. It's a great, funny building, and you can see how coal is being doled. But what is really interesting, what happened early this year, is that they showed that they switched their fuel. On their roof, they switched to solar. Even there. So, if we tick the boxes, well, it'll be obvious. To some extent it does. There's a lot of coal there, that's fine, but it's never going to be clean enough. It's probably not economic anymore, and it's not innovating. So we need to look for something else. Oil. Is oil smart energy? Well, it's not carbon-free. It's not as bad, maybe, as coal, but and it definitely creates social problems. We fought a few wars over oil, I remember. It is economic and reliable, but the abundancy of it, well, there's some dispute, but we're running out of oil, and it won't take more than 50 years. So we should come up with something else. But the innovation of this industry so far has been totally focused. They've been very innovative in how to get oil out of the ground. Yes, a lot of exciting technology to drill deeper, to open up shale gas and get more out of our soils. But in the usage of oil, hardly any innovation worked. You might think that your cars have become much more efficient over the last 10 years. Well, I have to disappoint you, because there have been measurements, real measurements, for 10 years on cars, on the street, measuring their tailpipe continuously. And in spite of the clever technology, the start-stop things, whatever we put in that, the sad conclusion was they haven't performed any better over this last decade. This is not going to cut the cake. Oil is pretty much the transport fuel, and only that small slice that you see there from oil is used for power, for the electricity industry. The rest is materials and heating in the industry. And you see some of the players that are there, and these players do recognize that something needs to change. They are adopting and adapting to and even embracing new energies. Look at this. In 2016, they increased their investments in this sector and found ways of investing their money increasingly in startups and ventures in clean energy. So they're making that shift. They see that their business is going to change. But there is a war going on. It's only a tiny enemy for coal, you might say. Those few electric cars, will they make a difference? Well, I'm afraid they will. Because a country like Norway has decided in 2025 to ban the fossil car. You can't buy a fossil car anymore in Norway. Okay, that's Norway. But look at that, India. Only 4 or 5 years later, they will do the same thing, ban the fossil fuel car. Scotland will step in 2 years later. France, England, to follow in 2040. So the car manufacturers also switch. Volvo and Land Rover announced that they will quit fossil fuel cars and switch to electric. And Uber announced recently that their complete fleet in London must be 100% electric by 2025. Massive change is going to come, and oil will feel it. China this week announced to also introduce a ban. They didn't make up their minds yet when exactly and how it will look, but they will join the group on top of this slide. But we have gas. Yes, we have gas, and gas is abundant and economic, and the carbon emissions are much lower than the other sources. So this looks pretty nice. Less of social problems there. Innovations, applying gas to transportation as well, replacing oil for cars. So that's good, but what about the reliability of this? You might say on the one hand that gas actually helps the energy system to become reliable, because gas stations help us to balance the load. If there's too much demand and too little that comes from renewable sources, gas can step in. It's a very flexible source. That's great. But there's also something else. One of the biggest markets in the world is Europe. We use a lot of gas in this place, and it comes from different places across the world. Within Europe, from Norway, a large part, but also from outside Europe, less stable regions. It even comes in ships from other places across the world. And Shell, since they took over British Gas, has become a major player in this field. So we can rely on Shell to take care of us. But there is a slice, a yellow slice, that is significant, right? Where does this come from? Well, I guess you know, it comes from the East. How reliable is that? It's very political. Can we do it with nukes? Can we use nuclear? Yeah, we do. We do already for more than 50 years. And it's proven to be quite reliable. Yes, it went wrong every now and then, but at least it's carbon-free, right? So let's have a closer look. There is quite a bit of uranium across the world. It will not last longer than 50 to maybe 100 years, but it gets us somewhere. But the social impact, we all know, when it goes wrong, it's really wrong. And we have a lot of difficulty maintaining the social impact of nuclear energy. And these guys, they have difficulty to innovate. Of course, nuclear fusion might be the solution to all this. And for decades, I've heard the promise that nuclear fusion will be there in 40 years. They told me 40 years ago that it would take another 40 years. And even today, they're telling me it will take another 40 years. We'll see. There's also something like thorium instead of uranium, which might allow us to make more smarter and smaller nuclear stations with less damage and less waste. That's great. Bill Gates is investing in that, but it's still in the lab. We haven't seen it in real life. Let's have a look at the economy of nuclear, because that's also in bad weather. This is a station that is being built in the US, a huge station with a bill of $11 billion to be built for Duke Energy by Westinghouse. But as you may have heard, Westinghouse, part of Toshiba, went bankrupt early this year or last year. And Duke Energy was not able to find other contractors that could follow up and complete this place. So they were in deep problems. After spending a lot of money, they needed to do something else. So what did they do? They chose something else. And this looks better, looks smarter. I'll get back to that. The only thing is, it became a little bit more expensive for their customers. Another nuclear plant I want to show is showing how reliable and robust actually nuclear energy is. There's something to say for that. In spite of the horror scenarios of Fukushima, this power plant is in a region that was hit by Harvey. Actually, Harvey fully hit its place 2 weeks ago now. And through this whole catastrophe, the machines kept running. All this concrete, all this steel, it stood there firm and kept going and could continue to deliver their power. So that's a hooray for nuclear. And you might wonder, well, isn't Texas also a place where a lot of wind energy is being built? Yes, there is. Texas is one of the largest wind energy markets in the world. So what happened to them? Actually, Harvey landed in Corpus Christi, and there's a huge wind farm in Corpus Christi. 200 windmills standing there. So as you can see, the landscape really was devastated by Harvey, but all the windmills were there. They switched it off just before Harvey arrived and put it back on afterwards. Actually, all the wind farms in Texas are back online except one, and that one is not online because the grid failed. So it cannot transport its energy. Okay, that says a lot for wind. It is carbon-free, it generates jobs, it's safe, and there's a lot of it, right? Even imagine now we can go on sea. So let's have a look also at how economic and innovative this business is. Wind onshore, over the last 7 years, in the US, has multiplied 7-fold. That's impressive. But look at what happened on sea. Over a little bit longer stretch of time, offshore wind grew by 75, a factor of 75. This is an industry that's booming. That's all nice because there were subsidies, etc. But hey, they can do the job now for 2 cents per kilowatt hour. This is cheaper than any other source. It is as cheap as the old machines that do nuclear and coal. So wind can compete already in large parts of the world. And hooray, expectations from innovation are that we can cut this price in half in the next decades. For wind offshore, these reductions, although they're at a higher level now, are even more staggering. From the 6 to 7 cents that it costs these days to run a farm on the shore, they will get down to close to 3 cents as well. Wind is really going to cut the cake. And we have solar left. What about solar? Well, solar has been growing even faster. In the US alone, solar grew over 7 years by a factor of 40. and has been much faster than anyone expected. It's been baffling the experts. Experts, you say? Well, there is a group of experts in Paris. That's the International Energy Agency. They are supposed to help the whole world predicting where the energy system is going and what we need to build and to apply as energy sources. So these are the smart guys that can really help us figure it out. So they did a lot of predictions on solar, and they started to do that in 2002, 15 years ago. Have a look. This is a complicated graph, but the black line shows you how fast actually solar grew. And the funny colored lines are the predictions from the IEA from 2002 to 2016. They even estimated the last time that the growth would revert and there would be less solar in a couple of years. So apparently it's hard. We did see a huge growth over the last 7 years in solar. Until now, it's a 85 billion market, and the prices came down by 25%, currently below 3 cents. Still, it's only covering 2% of our whole energy needs. So solar is small, right? It's insignificant on a global scale. But look what happens over the next year. Prices will go down, cut in half. Business will go up, keep growing, and it's going to be a business representing a total value over that next 17 years of 2 trillion euros that can be spent. And it will bring us to a serious contribution of solar, but with a lot of opportunity to go even further than that. We're not finished in 2035. We can do a lot more in solar, especially if you use these new technologies and new materials. Perovskite. Perovskite is a material that's not using any silicon, but organic materials, cheap, abundant materials. And by using that, you can create flexible solar cells. You can put them on a roof tile, on your car deck, something like that. And you can produce them using very simple technique like printing. We've been printing since 1500 long. So this is simple technology that will help us to even improve solar energy beyond what is already happening. So we have solar and wind as the clear winners on my score. But one thing we didn't cover, the reliability, because we all know that, well, the sun doesn't always shine. We have a lot of wind today. We have some sun now, I believe, finally, but it was stormy. But we can't really rely on that by themselves, so we need a little bit more to make it reliable. And there's three things that I think can do the trick. Demand response, making sure that we use energy when it is being produced. It's easier said than done, but technology can help us to do that. Let me give you an example. Again, in the US, in California, they had a problem. They built a gas plant on top of a seismic seizure in the ground. It's not so smart to do, but hey, these guys are in a place where you have a lot of seismic activity. So what happened is that there was some seismic activity and it broke the pipeline, the gas line. So they were out of supply of gas. And this plant was actually the plant that they needed to make a reliable energy system, to account for the fluctuations, because gas is the fuel that can do that. Nuclear can't fluctuate. Coal has difficulty doing some fluctuation. No, we need gas to take care of that. So they were in trouble. They couldn't provide the flexibility services anymore. So they called for solutions. They saw that it was very expensive to repair their pipe, but it would create the same risk over and over. You can't control the soil there. So they were looking for something different, and they called for options from the market. And some guys came up with a clever solution. Nest, the thermostat guys. 50,000 of their customers were connected to a cloud system that could steer their demand, so that could determine when the air conditioners were really turned off and on. Maintaining the same comfort in the home, that could provide a flexibility that solved the whole thing. That's what we call this demand response. The second thing is that we need our grids to become intelligent. You're used to be talking or hearing about smart grids, adding a smart meter here and there. Yeah, great. But true intelligence needs more. To have intelligence grids, we need artificial intelligence to play a role. We read a lot about that too, right? And this is a company from the UK. that actually started helping Google. Google ran out of options to save energy in their data centers. They tried everything until they tried DeepMind. By applying their artificial intelligence and managing the energy needs in that building, they could save another 15%. So what did Google do? They bought DeepMind. Smart, and they have the pockets for that. And together, as a company, they're now helping the national grid in the UK to put intelligence into the grid to balance the demand and the supply in England. In the Netherlands, we've seen also another application using blockchain. Corporate companies like the grid operator TenneT and IBM, you all know, but also startups, Sonnen, a battery company, battery solar company from Germany, and Van der Bron, an energy provider, teamed up and decided to start using blockchain. Why? Because if you use energy from many sources and you want to switch the loads, you need to be able to do transactions about it. You need to be able to pay your neighbor for providing you with solar energy, or pay the business in your area to switch off their lights to make sure the flexibility. And blockchain can actually do that. So applying that technology, they make the grid intelligent. And the third thing you need, obviously, is storage. If you have storage, well, then the whole problem goes away, right? You just produce energy, you store it, and when you need it, you tap it. Great. Very expensive technology, but things are changing. You know these guys, they're battery guys. Yeah, they also run a car, but they're battery guys. Look at that. This is their Giga factory in Nevada. Powered by solar, by the way, but it produces 2 gigawatts of batteries every year. It's a massive, massive, massive thing. And these guys announced that within this year, they expected to be building even 3 or 4 more of these massive giga factories. So this alone seems to indicate that the Americans will dominate the market and have sufficient battery supplies for every one of us. Well, no, because some other manufacturing countries in Asia have even much more plans for gigawatts of lithium-ion batteries. They're actually blowing the Americans away almost. So there's going to be a glut of batteries and storage, and the prices are coming down. This is going to change the things, and the first country that experienced that was Australia. Australia have their summer when we have our winter, right? So last summer they had big problems with power outages because the grid couldn't deal the heat wave that was there. And they wanted to have a solution for that for the next summer, which is going to come now, around December. So they called for options from the market. Some said, well, let's keep that coal-fired plant open that we decided to close and reopen others. Some wanted to build a quick extra to the grid to make it more flexible. But there was another solution provided by Elon Musk. And he said, I can solve this with batteries. And if I don't manage to do it with 100 days, you'll get it for free. Wow. They were interested. The Aussies took it, and now it's there. By combining a wind farm with that capacity of batteries, renewable energy can make the grid reliable in Australia. Guys in Stanford, researchers, try to find out whether we can really all switch to renewables. And they were happy to find that by 2050, it's far away, but we will all live by the time. By 2050, actually 140 countries across the world can be fully switched to 100% renewable. 140 countries. And if you are a quick counter, you can see that 57% of that energy will come from solar, and 37% will come from wind. So there will be 6% remaining for tidal and other solutions. It's really going to be a wind and solar solution, the smart energy of the future. Well, these are scientists, right? So they have great models, but they're not real businessmen. But there's an interesting business committee This one, the Energy Transition Committee. And they did similar estimates, a bit more conservative maybe, but even they said, we can get to 80% carbon-free by 2040. So we can get rid of almost all our carbon within 25 years. You might say, well, yeah, okay, nice done, but who's behind that? Wow, these are industry players that are the major players in the energy space, right? General Electric, Shell, Statoil, BHP Billiton, a mining company. So these guys also see the potential for us to get rid of carbon. Isn't that hopeful? Even the guys that are in the heart of oil, they see it now. Saudi Aramco is the biggest company in the world. They want to do an IPO and go to the stock market and sell off 10% of their shares this year or next. But they've committed to spend 5% of what comes out of that from the investors to put it into clean energy, renewables. And that's a staggering $5 billion that's going to be spent on clean, renewable energy. In India, there's already now the biggest solar factory in the world. The greatest one-location solar plant is 0.5 gigawatt large in India. California found out 4 months ago that they actually were already covering 50% of their energy needs with solar. Right now, this March. And they said, well, we had this goal of reaching 50% renewables by 2030. That was the policy. But if we already can do this now, why don't we shift this a little bit earlier and make sure we get to 50% all over the year by 2036, in 20 years? And they said, well, once we're there, let's make sure we get the full thing going too. And they are committing themselves legally to getting to 100% renewables by 2045, before the 2050 from Stanford. So China is the other big economy. It's also the powerhouse of producing solar cells. A lot of the solar cells that we use today come from China, and they have a lot of deployment of solar in their own country. And they have steep goals to realize. 100 gigawatts of solar, that's an amazing amount. Let me explain you a little bit later. What's funny is, by the beginning of this year, they counted, and they said, oh, we're already at 80. That looks good. We've still got 3 years to go, so we'll manage to arrive at 105. Well, actually, they measured again where the market has grown in July, half a year later, and oops, already over the target. And these guys did not decide to stop building solar. No, they said, well, let's increase that target a little bit more. This is great stuff. We can use it. Keep going. And to give you an impression, this is 5 times as much as what's totally generated in the USA today. And if you would take that area that it covers, it would fully cover the greater London area with solar. Massive. And, well, China is a coal country, you know. They have a lot of trouble with smog and health of their people. But if you look carefully at this curve, it shows that wind and solar will both be competitive with coal, cheaper than coal, within 4 years from now. This is what these guys have seen. This is why they're making that change. They are smart. And they actually found out what clean coal is. This is a coal mine. It's a coal mine that's not used anymore. It's flooded. And these clever guys built a floating solar system on top of a coal mine. I think that's a better solution for clean coal than we've seen anywhere else. There's one economy larger than China, although some doubt that, and that's the US. And the US has taken a bit of a wrong turn over the last half year or so. We all know. So what's happening there? Well, the good thing is if you go to the US, you will see that some people and organizations in the US, they don't want to quit the Paris Agreement. They sign up, even stronger than before, to make that Paris Agreement happen. Companies, cities, universities, and states, they are combining their efforts. They are taking the lead, and they can really do it, whether the federal government wants it or not, achieve our Paris goals. They are still in. This gives you an overview of a group of companies that most of you will recognize that have all committed themselves to become 100% renewable. They will buy their power from renewable energies alone in the next few years. A city there in the US, one of them is New York. And New York is not so much focusing on solar energy by itself, but it's taking another angle. New York is an interesting lab where people live closely together. So they decided to use the grid to really allow people to transact their energy amongst themselves. So create a sharing economy for energy. By applying blockchain technology in a part in New York, now it is possible to buy your electricity from your neighbors or to sell your electricity to the shop using blockchain technology. Utilities. Utilities are the guys that are running this show, right? They are running that energy system that we're talking about. So what do they do? Well, in general, almost all utilities know and also act because they see that this is all changing and it requires them to change. And they've been investing over the last years quite a bit of money into clean technologies. In the US and Europe together, $3 billion has been spent over the last 6 to 7 years in cleaner technology options, the ones that I was indicating to you as a solution. So they'll be there too. Other investors have also a big appetite for wind and solar, and I'm not sure whether you would guess what kind of investor this would be, but the funny thing, this is one of the most famous investors that we know, Warren Buffett. His vehicle, Berkshire Hathaway, is very keen on building solar and investing in that, but also keen on buying grids and grid companies to be able to manage that whole energy around. He believes that there's the future of energy. And another example is a coalition called the Breakthrough Coalition. You might not know them, but they have gathered 1 billion, just after Paris, 1 billion to spend in new energy technologies that create breakthroughs that we need. Not deploying existing infrastructure and technologies that we know, like winds, etc., but really going into new technology, next generation technology that will help us to become even smarter. And well, who are they? You might recognize some of them. They're not all there, but those are the richest and most successful tech guys in the world that are behind that. It was an initiative from Bill Gates. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you allow me to draw a conclusion here. If we combine solar and wind and smart technologies to create flexibility and reliability, we can get rid of the other stupid energy sources. We can become smart, and it doesn't have to take long. All the energy systems can be smart. Let's do it. Thank you very much. But you didn't come here to listen to all these preaching stories, although I hope it helped you to see a little bit of perspective for the startups that you're going to see next. Because it's time to get the startups on stage. The 9 startups of 2017. They've been working hard. We really whipped them. For 150 days, they were in one room, hardly could leave, maybe for the weekend, and we really chastened them with a lot of trainings, with a lot of expertise, with workshops. This is one of the quieter ones that we've seen, but they've had many, with people from knowledge companies that provided legal knowledge, marketing knowledge, lean methodologies, design thinking, expertise, industry knowledge. They came here to work with these startups for an hour, for 3 hours, for a day, sometimes even more. And that's not all, because there was time between that to do their business, and they got help from mentors. We have the luxury to have created a network and a community of over 100 people from the energy industry and entrepreneurs that are willing to share some of their time, their knowledge, for free to help startups. So we've invited them early in the beginning of the program, in the first 3 weeks, to come and see some of the startups and see whether there's a match. And for every startup, we made a match. Every startup, we made a match of 2 or 3 core mentors. And those mentors stayed with the startup through the whole period. They really gave them support. They really helped them to reflect on what they were doing and find new ways. They connected them to others. And these are the guys and girls that did that this year. And it's only a cross-section of our industry. But I think these people that helped the startups to grow through that program really deserve thank you and applause. Thank you very much. And they got more help and more things to do, because the other great thing that we have, that we've created a network of partners around smart energy. Partners that consist of industry players that have a conventional position, or companies that try to innovate, provide technology, internet technology, new knowledge and expertise on how to build teams, on using new working methods. And we've been organizing interactions between those partner organizations and our startups. So these guys have been awfully busy. They're tired. So they need some energizer. They need some Rockstart Smart Energy. All right. And they're ready. They're ready to go on stage, almost. Let me tell you just few things. Where did these startups all come from? Well, some from the Netherlands, some from Europe, others from other parts in the world, Australia, Asia, and Africa. Some were focused fully on solar energy, and others took software as their core. Operations, predictive operations, smart operations for some others, using a business-to-business approach by providing solutions to businesses, and in other cases, helping consumers and customers together with businesses. Using Internet of Things, machine learning, big data. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the batch of 2017. It's time to kick off. Let's do it.